This is the story of the 10 most lethal killers this country has ever produced. Confirmed victims, verified methods, current status. Because 3 of the men on this list are still alive, still breathing, still sitting in a cell less than a day's drive from where you are right now. We start with the ones history barely remembers. Number 10. Israel Keyes did not have a type. He did not have a territory. He had a system, and the system was built to make sure nobody could ever connect his crimes to him. Keyes buried kill kits across the country years before he used them. Cash, weapons, tools, sealed in containers and buried in remote locations in multiple states. Then he would fly somewhere completely unconnected to his real life, rent a car under a false identity, drive for hours, dig up a kit, and kill a stranger who had no link to him whatsoever. No pattern, no geography, no motive a detective could trace. In February 2012, he abducted 18-year-old Samantha Koenig from a coffee stand in Anchorage, Alaska, where she worked the night shift. He forced her to record a ransom text message after she was already dead to buy himself time. 8 confirmed murders. He told investigators there could be more, then killed himself in his cell before he ever named all of them. The FBI closed the book on Israel Keyes, still not knowing how many people he actually took. Number 9. Rodney Alcala was a contestant on a television dating show in 1978. He won. The bachelorette who chose him later refused to go on the date. She said something about him felt wrong. She had no idea how right she was. By then, Alcala had already killed at least 4 times. He photographed many of his victims before their deaths, and after his eventual arrest, police found over 1,000 photographs in a storage locker, most of women and girls who were never identified. He is confirmed responsible for at least 8 murders, though investigators believe the number may be far higher. He died in prison in 2021, and to this day, some of the faces in those photographs still have no names. Number 8. For over a year, the city of Los Angeles slept with their windows locked and lights on because Richard Ramirez did not care whose home he entered. The Night Stalker broke into homes at random at night while families slept inside. 13 confirmed murders between 1984 and 1985, alongside assaults that left survivors for the rest of their lives. He signed some crime scenes with pentagrams. He told a courtroom after his conviction that he would see them all in Disneyland. Not hell, Disneyland. He died of natural causes on death row in 2013, having never shown a moment of remorse for any of it. Number 7. Edmund Kemper was 6'9" and had an IQ over 140. He was also, by his own later admission, a boy who killed the family cats before he ever touched a person. At 15, he murdered his grandparents. After a stint in a psychiatric facility, he was released back into his mother's custody, a decision that would cost at least 6 young women their lives. He picked up hitchhikers near college campuses in California, killed them, and kept parts of their bodies as trophies. His final victim was his own mother, whom he had blamed for a lifetime of humiliation. He then called the police himself and confessed. 10 confirmed murders. He remains in prison to this day and has been denied parole every time he is asked. Number 6. Jeffrey Dahmer's neighbors in a Milwaukee apartment complex complained about a smell for months. He told them it was meat spoiling in a broken freezer. Some of it was. Between 1978 and 1991, Dahmer lured men back to his apartment, drugged them, and killed them. 17 confirmed murders. What separated Dahmer from almost every name on this list was what came after the killing. He kept remains. He photographed his victims at every stage. In 1991, one victim escaped, drugged and bleeding, into the street, and police, called to the scene, returned him directly to Dahmer's apartment, believing Dahmer's explanation over the victim's terror. That man was killed hours later. Dahmer was beaten to death by a fellow inmate in 1994. Some considered it justice, arriving 3 years too late. Number 5. For 31 years, the city of Wichita, Kansas, did not know that the man overseeing their neighborhood compliance codes, animal control violations, overgrown lawns, was also the man who had been binding, torturing, and killing their neighbors since 1974. Dennis Rader called himself BTK. He sent taunting letters to police and media describing his crimes in clinical detail, then went quiet for over a decade. In 2004, bored of being forgotten, he resurfaced with new letters, and that decision led directly to his capture in 2005, when a floppy disk he sent police was traced back to his church computer. 10 confirmed murders. He is 81 years old and still alive today in a Kansas prison, and investigators in Oklahoma have reopened cold cases they now believe may connect to him. We're only halfway. What comes next killed more people than the last 5 names combined, and one of them is dying in prison right now, having never revealed where all the bodies are. Number 4. John Wayne Gacy performed as a clown at children's birthday parties. He was a respected local businessman. He once posed for a photograph with the First Lady of the United States. Underneath his house, in a crawl space he dug himself, were the remains of 26 young men and boys. Gacy had killed 33 in total between 1972 and 1978, luring most of them to his home with promises of construction work or simply overpowering them through handcuff tricks he presented as a party game. He was executed in 1994. To this day, 8 of his victims have never been identified. Number 3. Ted Bundy did not look like what people expected a killer to look like. That was the entire method. He was articulate. He was attractive. He wore a fake cast on his arm to appear helpless and ask women for help carrying books to his car. At least 30 confirmed murders across 7 states between 1974 and 1978. Investigators believe the true number is likely much higher, possibly over 100. He escaped police custody twice. The second time, he killed again within weeks. He represented himself at his own trial and was executed in Florida in 1989, still refusing to name every victim until the hours before his death, using the location of remains as a bargaining chip for a stay of execution that never came. Number 2. For nearly 2 decades, young women and girls disappeared from a single stretch of highway outside Seattle, and nobody could stop it. Gary Ridgway killed 49 confirmed victims between 1982 and 1998, most of them sex workers and runaway teenagers he believed no one would look for. He avoided the death penalty by agreeing to lead investigators to remains still undiscovered, a deal that closed dozens of cases for grieving families, decades after their daughters vanished. He is 77 years old and still alive today in a Washington state prison. In late 2025, reports surfaced that he had entered end-of-life care. Corrections officials denied it. Either way, when Gary Ridgway dies, some families may never learn what happened to the women they loved. And now, the name that should be the most infamous in American criminal history, and isn't. Number 1. Samuel Little did not fit any profile detectives were trained to look for. He targeted women on the margins, sex workers, addicts, runaways, women whose deaths were routinely written off as overdoses or unexplained. For 35 years, across 19 states, nobody connected a single one of his murders to another. In 2018, in a Texas prison cell, an investigator handed Samuel Little a pad of paper and asked him to draw. He had a gift for faces he claimed he could never forget. Over the following months, he confessed to 93 murders and started sketching the women, one by one, from memory decades old. The FBI has confirmed 60 of those confessions. That makes Samuel Little the most prolific serial killer in the recorded history of the United States. Not Bundy, not Gacy, a man most Americans have never heard his name spoken once. He died in prison in December 2020 at 80 years old, having taken more secrets to his grave than any killer on this list. Secrets that belong to women whose families are, in some cases, still searching. 10 men, hundreds of confirmed victims. An unknown number more who were never found, never identified, never given a name back. 3 of them are still alive tonight, in cells across this country. And at least 2 are dying, with information no one has been able to pull out of them. If there's a case on this list you think deserves its own full episode, tell us in the comments. We read everyone.